I think the easiest thing is that movement's medicine. Like if you can sum it up, movement is simply medicine. It's going to give you momentum. It's going to get rid of that brain fog. It's going to give you mental resiliency. So if you can just view it as, hey, this is part of my mental health plan, instead of change the verbiage, instead of working out, I don't like the word workout, use training. What are you training for? What's your why? What drives you forward? Like start viewing it as part of your medical plan. I think that starts to change the landscape around it. If you're a rebel and you want to rebel, like come back yourself, be like, hey, mind, I hear you, but I'm going to act against what you're telling me to do. That's how you start to move the needle forward. Think about the person that you want to become and just act that way. I think that's the best thing that you can do, is just take that approach, fight what your mind's telling you, and just move your body.
Welcome to the Wellness That Fits podcast, where we help busy moms eat well, restore energy, and clear brain fog without sacrificing family time or your sanity. I'm Cassie, registered dietitian and mom of 3. I believe wellness should fit your real life, not the other way around. If you're tired of complicated wellness trends and want simple, sustainable strategies for meal prep, holistic nutrition, and time-saving routines, you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another episode of Wellness That Fits. Thanks so much for being here. And today I have Trevor Folker with me here. He is from Movement Performance and Rehab, and he is going to help us understand a little bit more about the benefits of movement and exercise and its relationship with mental disorders like anxiety and depression. And I think this is so important for us to hear about because according to the World Health Organization, more than 332 million people globally suffer from depression, and anxiety is one of the most common mental disorders affecting over 300 million people. And I just like to start again with a few more stats because I think this is mind-blowing. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, 19% of U.S. adults had any anxiety disorder in the past year. So they had experienced about 20% experience anxiety. So I think given the scale, it's really important for us to explore some other interventions that don't require medicine. Maybe sometimes it does, but other interventions like physical activity that have become really important. And the research supports that exercise is a powerful tool, not just for fitness, but for mental health and cognitive clarity. So with all of that background, I am so excited to bring on Trevor. Trevor, thank you so much for being here.
Cassie, I appreciate it. Those stats are wild.
They are.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah, a hot topic that I think we have to address. And Trevor, before we get started really diving into the mental health aspect, can you share a little bit about your background and what inspired you to start Movement Performance and Rehab?
Yeah, for sure. It's weird being on this side on the mic. Usually I'm the one asking the question, so it's cool. So I appreciate it. But so Movement Performance and Rehab, we are a private out of network physical therapy and sports med clinic in Green Bay. I say we. My wife and I started it it's been about 6.5 years that we've been open now. And the whole reason essentially we did start was because I mentioned we were out of network, and obviously you're hearing a lot about insurance and stuff. Nowadays, premiums are skyrocketing. Reimbursement rates for physical therapy, sports med have all been decreasing. So the traditional world started to become more about volume and less about quality care, and really like patient-centered, like truly patient-centered. So we wanted to branch away and cut the red tape. The whole reason we started is we just truly want to help people live their best life, be as strong as they want, do what they want, essentially for as long as they want to. And, we've been lucky to be able to add staff to our team. We've got Tia, who sees primarily at this point, pelvic floor dysfunction, pregnant postpartum moms that want to stay active throughout pregnancy, get back to activity postpartum. And that's been very cool to see. Erica, my wife, she's a PT, athletic trainer, PT or DPT, and then Tia is an athletic trainer. Erica also sees a lot of like pregnant moms postpartum. We've got Nate, who's a physical therapist. He loves the active adult, the gym athlete, runners, youth athletes. And then Jess is our admin, but she does a lot of strength and conditioning work, one-on-one personal training, a lot of moms as well. She loves also pregnant postpartum mom. So it's been cool because we've been able to serve a wide population of people And, the whole goal is a team-centered approach and really just helping you get back to doing all the things without any aches, pains, or if you just want more performance-based work, we can help you with that as well. So it's been fun. It's been a journey for 6.5 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And do you want to talk just a second about your podcast? Because the reason we're actually having this conversation today is because you had an amazing episode talking about movement and exercise and anxiety. So, yeah, I would love just to hear a little bit about the podcast if you wouldn't mind.
Sure. No, not at all. Yeah, I appreciate that. So the podcast is the Green Bay Health Project. I started it, if I'm being honest, during COVID because it was a way to connect with people. We couldn't go out and about, or some people were a little more hesitant to meet in person. So it was still a way to connect. But it also opened my eyes to all of the non-traditional health and wellness experts we have in the greater Green Bay area. And so I really wanted to highlight them and turn it into like an ecosystem that people could turn to for non-traditional or different approaches to health and wellness. So that's how it started. And we're over 100 episodes at this point. But this year I did want to tweak it a little bit. I kind of wanted to kind of revisit the path and the reasoning why I wanted to do it. And selfishly for me, it's a way to learn and a way to, keep my mind sharp with all the things. So I wanted to turn it more educational, 15, 20-minute episodes where we're talking about some hot topics that are in the health and wellness conversation these days. And to your point, sorry about that. It's been fun because I've talked about, the importance of movement, or I've talked about grief. I mean, this year for myself has been a big year of a lot of things, performance, strength training over 40. So it's super cool. And then, yeah, to your point, one of the most recent episodes was about, I think it was like the darker months of, in Wisconsin, it's dark all the time now. And so it's like, how do we combat mental health when it's darker, and seasonal depression's a real thing these days? So many people struggle with that, myself included. And you kind of rattle off some of the stats. So I think it's a big conversation to have. So I kind of just want to lean into those hotter topics. So I think that this is a perfect opportunity for more conversation around that, because that's where it all starts.
Yeah, I love that you share that. And like you said, you do talk a lot about that exercise and how it can be a form of medicine for mood disorders. So, based on your experience, how does physical activity compare in effectiveness to traditional approaches like therapy or medication for anxiety and depression?
Sure. So I think that's a good question. And I want to preface it with, like, I'm not anti-meds or anti-therapy. Like, they all have their time and place, and it's all part of the plan. And, like I mentioned, I'm a very anxious individual. I'm a very stressed individual. So I got hit. It's something I've dealt with, and I didn't really know what I was dealing with until I actually went to therapy. But like back in 2017, I did all the things. I worked with a therapist. I was on SSRIs. I'm not anymore, but I went through 4 therapists before I found the one that was able to really help me. So I'm not anti any of that stuff, but I do feel that movement and exercise is significantly underdosed when it comes to mental health and just helping combat it a little bit. In that podcast that you kind of referenced, I did talk about a study, and it's one of the, I like research, but it's one of the biggest studies I've ever seen. For reference, there were 128,000 individuals, like adults, that were part of this. It was a huge review, and that's Lambeau Field plus Miller Park, or whatever it is now, American Family Insurance Park, filled to max capacity and then some. So like a ton of people. And they looked at just this. So it was basically looking at how does physical therapy compare to medications, therapy, and its impact on depression, anxiety, mental health, stress disorders. And so it's big. It holds a lot of weight, essentially. And what that study found was that, first and foremost, the traditional medical system waits, unfortunately, until people are too bad. It typically waits too long before they will try to help. You hear that across the board, even just like some metabolic disorders. But, it's usually, how bad can you get before we can help you? And in my opinion, exercise, and then it's like meds and therapy, which again have their time and place. But what's not involved is medicine or movement. And what this study found was that oftentimes movement and exercise has the same effect, if not more effect, on improving mental health than your traditional medications and therapy. So why is it not the first step, or at least part of the three, right? So why can't we pair medication therapy and exercise or movement with the rest of our processes? I just think it's severely underdosed and not talked enough about. My personal opinion is because there's no money to be made. It's free. And unfortunately, a lot of decisions are made based off of profitability these days. So like, it's the easiest thing to do is go for a walk. It's free. It's there. It's always available. So I just think it's hugely important and should be part of the process.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And to your point with the medication, it's very easy to hand out meds, right? And again, this is all with the background information and knowledge that some people absolutely do need to be on medication and have therapy, right? But I think, especially in the United States, we are more apt to taking a pill. I mean, you survey the population, and even though you said how easy is it to go on a 10-minute walk, right? Super easy. However, I think if you give somebody a pill versus go for a walk, right? Like a lot of people will choose the pill.
100%.
And obviously, our audience is more of that holistic minded person who wants to do other things, movement and dietary interventions and other mental health interventions to combat that anxiety and depression. That study is mind-blowing, especially when you put it in terms of Lambeau Field and Miller Park. Just the 100,000 people, and what they found was movement was just as effective, if not more. Can't
Yeah.
yeah, if
Yep.
not more.
That was their quote. It was said uh, throughout their research and their findings and I think it was like 1,000 randomized controlled trials, 97 systematic, like a ton of information found that um, more impactful, if not, or just as impactful, if not more than the traditional route.
Do you recall the amount like the minutes exercised or the types at all?
Yeah, that's a good question. It looked at multiple different, interventions from an exercise standpoint. So I think it talked about, walking compared to, your strength training compared to high intense interval or just mixed modes of exercise. And, it was across the board. It didn't necessarily you were doing. What was consistent across the board was elevating your heart rate. That was the biggest thing. So whatever it is that you do or that you enjoy, as long as you're elevating that heart rate and getting that huge dopamine and impact and all those endorphins that are getting released by elevating your heart rate, that was the common denominator across the board. So whether you're going for a brisk walk, strength, like I said, strength training, yoga, anything like that, as long as that heart rate's being elevated, that was the common denominator that they talked about.
That's so nice to hear because I think a lot of we hear so much these days, there's so much data thrown at us, and the fact that we can just choose the mode of exercise that works with our lifestyle, that works with our preferences, I think is so important because on the other side of like anxiety and depression and just not feeling like you want to do anything, I think the more we can have the individual pick out the types of exercise that they like do what you want to do best, like do what you have fun with, as long as it's elevating your heart rate. I think that's really important to note. So, my next question, and this kind of, I want to like bring this to your type of clientele because I would imagine you're based out of Wisconsin, like you said, and we have a lot of dark months. We have winter like 9 months out of the year, basically. And I think with the seasonal depression, but also with maybe like half of your therapists are seeing a lot of like postpartum moms with that pelvic floor dysfunction. I would imagine many of them might have, and maybe it's not diagnosed, but many of them might be experiencing anxiety or depression. So when you're working with someone who struggles with either anxiety or depression, are you doing any types of movements that you want to prioritize with them? Are there, we kind of talked about the specific modalities and how it doesn't really matter as much, but is there anything that you're specifically doing to lean more into that mental health purpose?
Sure. I think it's more about meeting the person where they're at. In today's world of influencers and a million and one morning routines, it can all seem daunting, do this or do that. If you're not doing this one thing, you're doing everything wrong. And it's easy to get very overwhelmed with all of the knowledge and information that's out there. So, as far as, Wisconsin, it's dark, it's crappy weather. I'm staring out at snow on the ground right now. It's really meeting people where they're at. So if you are, say, in the midst of a big battle, like what's the minimal effective dose that you can allow yourself to do? You know, like on top of like mental health stuff, anxiety in this day and age, there's also the holidays and there's a lot of other things going on that play a part in this. So it's, one, having a conversation, being comfortable to have a conversation with somebody that you trust, I think to get some of that offloaded. But what's the minimal you can do? Can you go for a walk? Can you wake up and put your shoes on, and just move? That's really step one. Break it down into multiple steps if you have to. But, if people like to walk for 10 to 20 minutes, or if their jam is doing a 20-minute yoga routine or whatever it is, we need to meet them where they're at and start with that. And, a lot of people will downplay the impact of a 20-minute walk. And they're like, well, I didn't exercise. And it's like, well, what's your capacity at for the day? What do you feel like you're able to do? And if you are only able to go for a 10 or 20-minute walk, not only did you probably elevate your heart rate a little bit and accomplish something that you didn't want to do, you also loaded. Like that's a mental brain load. It's not, maybe you're not loading the barbell, which you don't have to do, but your brain is telling you to not do something and you went and combated it anyways, which is very powerful because then you start to get these adaptations mentally happening. You feel better about yourself. Typically, like I don't know many people that will go for a 20-minute walk and be like, man, I wish I really didn't do that afterwards. So I think it's really just about, like I said, meeting people where they're at, giving yourself grace to do the minimal effective dose. Like you don't have to go hard all the time. And then the other thing I think that we find is really powerful to like, if you're really struggling during a day, like how can you compound it with other things you're already doing in the day? I'm a big James Clear fan. I don't know if you've ever read the book Atomic Habits, and he talks about habit stacking. So what's built into your schedule? What can you do and what can you pack it with? Like I said, if you can get your shoes on, that's a cue in your mind. Hey, I'm going to put my shoes on and go for a walk. It just becomes so much more consistent and easier. Um, I think that's kind of the big thing is just really just doing the things like, and giving yourself grace to be like, hey, I didn't do a 45, 60-minute workout. That's fine. You don't need to do all that all of the time. Just do what you're capable of. The biggest thing, if you're a little uncomfortable doing it, you're definitely fighting that brain and that you're making those adaptations, which is really what we want to do.
Yeah, I love that. And when you talk about habit stacking, I just always think about what I try to do because I'll be honest, exercise is one of the hardest things for me. Like I will meal prep and eat healthy, and exercise for me really does take a lot of like consistency, like motivation. And I know it's not based on motivation, but it's still it's a little bit harder for me to do. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing when you say, just what's the lowest hanging fruit, right? So this weekend, I vacuuming, cleaning the house, and I'm lifting up the vacuum and on the stairs. And I am literally like, I can tell my heart is elevated. I'm going as fast as I can. So it's funny because I consider that movement, right? And it's kind of like habit stacking because the house needs to get cleaned. And so I just try to do it with as much vigor as I can to get my heart elevated.
That's
So
good though.
right. Like, so for anybody out there who's like, I don't know, I think cleaning the house and getting exercise at the same time would be one of your best habits. Run up and down the stairs a couple times between cleaning things, right?
Yeah. It doesn't have to be difficult. I know, like one of our mentors, he was at his son's football practice and he didn't get his training in for the day. And like, this is different. Like this guy just works out and enjoys it. I'm also that I work out every day. It's not my favorite thing to do. Like I truly don't enjoy it.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of benefits to it. But he was at his kid's football practice, had 10 minutes, didn't train for the day, and was like kind of like back and forth in his mind with things. So he did a 10-minute like sideline workout. He did burpees every minute, which is brutal. But I'm not saying that, but like build it into things that you're already doing, like because that makes it much more manageable and significantly less daunting of a task to do. So I just, it's so powerful when you can just build it into your day already.
Yeah, agree. So another question I have is, and you had mentioned this about kind of rewiring your brain. So a lot of people don't really realize the role exercise has in resilience to stress. So, how can you explain to people that movement isn't just about feeling better now, which is great, right? It clears your brain, clears your head, but it builds that long term mental resilience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's probably the most important piece of this is it doesn't feel like you're doing anything in the moment or you're not making a lot of change. But going back to that, comment about rewiring your brain, it's all about that brain chemistry. And my initial thought to that question is, I got coffee with a strength coach in town here in Green Bay, and we were talking about like your past self and what your future self wants. So like, how do you communicate with yourself? Right? Is it negative self-talk? Is it positive talk? Is it, the old me would, me and my brother, it's the old me would have responded this way, but the new me is doing this. So I think if you can kind of put yourself in that position this is what I'm used to, but this is where I want to get to, and this is the person I want to become. I think that starts to, again, it's all about the adaptability and the neurological changes and rewiring of the brain, essentially. So like you've got to combat that because every single day when you're in the battle of it, the grip of anxiety and stress and depression, you're not going to want to do these things. You're not going to want to feel like doing this. You're not going to be motivated. And that's a whole different conversation, motivation. I'm not a big fan of that, basically for the reason you kind of brought up before. But the long game is that today you like gets that quick hit, that quick chemistry shift, right? A single bout of exercise, which is wild, can reduce anxiety for up to 12 hours. I think that's a crazy stat as well that, I talked about on the podcast. Like that's a very insignificant amount of time. Yeah, I think that's a crazy stat is that like literally a single bout of exercise, 12 hours of anxiety reduction and improved mood. So that's like the quick hit that you would get right away, which again, SSRIs, 4 to 6 weeks to kick in and do all the work. So if you're stressed, anxious, go for a 20-minute walk. But then the future you, and this is where I like the old me versus the person I want to be, is playing like a different game. You've got the neuroplasticity changes in the brain. You're training your nervous system to recover faster after stress. So it's figuring out how to combat stress a little bit better. The heart rate variability, which is going to improve your sleep, so you have better baseline. You start to compound all of these benefits over the long game. You're building psychological resilience through the repeatedness of doing hard things, doing things you don't feel like doing. So you can't beat that. You can't, even though it doesn't feel like you're doing much now, these are going to compound and you're going to make all of these changes, these rewiring of the brain. You're doing hard things and it's truly, truly building mental resilience. Then when you are having a high stress day, a high anxious day, you're like, hey, it sucks right now, but I know that this will get better. It will pass because I've fought hard things already. And so that mental shift just starts to happen. And that's how the long-term changes really start to impact your daily life.
Thank you for sharing that. I think it's so interesting how our brains work, like how our brains, let's say we're on our screens and that's giving us a dopamine hit. And your brain over time, just like any addiction, gets wired to want that same thing and you want it quicker. And when you're talking about brain circuitry and neuroplasticity, we're talking about the more that you are engaging in that movement and that exercise, the more dopamine you're going to go through that same pathway, but it's going to be a different way. And it's going to rewire your brain towards those more positive things like movement, whether it be a walk or yoga. But I think it's so interesting. It's, I don't fully understand it, but I know the science behind neuroplasticity and the fact that we can change our brain
It's
circuitry.
wild.
Wild. So amazing. And hopeful, right? Like, it's not just like, I want to say like 10, 20 years ago, it was like movement to lose weight or to like
Right.
burn calories. And now it's like, oh my gosh, movement is so much more. And I don't even think about those things when I'm exercising. I'm thinking about clearing my brain, reducing neuroinflammation, improving mood, and decreasing anxiety and depression and all those things. So I love that you shared that. I think it's absolutely important. And, along these lines of getting consistent with exercising. Do you ever run across a situation where somebody is stressing out or having anxiety over maybe trying to get a workout in consistently and making sure they get an hour every single day? Because I do think that there needs to be some balance there between the dosage of exercise and maybe where they should start. I could see that in some people, that perfectionist mentality of like trying to
100%.
hit, 30 to 45 minutes every single day and has to be a certain kind of modality, or it could be anything, but you're trying to hit 45 minutes. Do you ever think that that could exacerbate anxiety or mood issues?
For sure. 100%. Like it's all about, everything's all about dosage and it's all about managing the stress levels because while exercise can help with stress, it's also a stressor. So there is that to deal with. There's like hormetic stress, which are considered the good stressors of life, like workout, cold plunges, saunas, eating well, like stuff like that. And then there's the chronic stressors, the family, the business, like work, life, basically. Regardless, it's all stress on the body. So good or bad, it's stress. So everything is about dosage, everything. And that's where I feel like a lot of people make it more daunting than they really need to. Because if you think about the workouts that are out there, or again, the influencers, like it's go hard all of the time. And honestly, it's not sustainable. You will break down. You're going to feel worse than you already did. So I think it's more about the dosage and it's more about the balance. And again, it's more about giving yourself the grace to start where you feel like you're at and don't, what is it? The comparison is the thief of joy, right? That's a huge quote and something I think about often, especially when it comes to exercising. So if you need to start where you're at. Don't get overwhelmed. The bigger key here is to be consistent. What can you maintain 3 or 4 days a week and do all the time and be consistent with it? What can you not get overwhelmed with? A good rule, 1 to 2 sessions per week that feel like maybe an 8 to 9 on the 10 scale of effort. And then the rest around a 6 to a 7 out of 10. So again, it's not daunting. Go for that. I keep talking about walking. People undervalue the impacts of walk, but you don't have to throw weights around. You don't have to throw barbells around. You can do yoga, Pilates. But if all you can start with, if you're going from nothing, what I would do is just start with 1 to 2 days a week of going for a walk. And if you're going to get a gym membership, just hit the treadmill. Show yourself and prove to yourself that you can do these things and you can be consistent with it. And then month 2, maybe start to pack on more. Then you start to implement some weights. And again, maintain the cardio side of things, but increase the weights. Month 3, start to come up with a full plan. I think it's big, but you've got to give yourself time and don't make it so daunting. Now, I think it's also important to talk about some of the red flags because again, stress is stress. Good or bad, it's stress on the body. So if you're having trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, or you feel more ramped up, feeling more wired, or your body's starting to ache a little more, you might be overtraining, you might be overdoing it. So we need to dose on life stress rather than just the gym stress. So if you have a crazy day with kids or family or a crappy day at work and it's just really throwing you through the roof, maybe, and you were going to hit a hard workout that day, change it. Like, don't add it to that. Give yourself permission to leave some gas in the tank because you will overdo it. You will burn out, which will then be a catalyst to just spiraling even more than you might be already. So I think and if you're somebody that works out regularly already, that's what you really need to focus on is what was that day of stress like? How do you feel that day? Have a little flexibility in your plan. And the goal is to just be consistent with it. You can always change the dosage. Just what do you feel that day and what can you do?
Yeah, I love that. And I think it speaks to everybody, but mostly parents, because I think you never know how your day is going to go and who's going to be sick. And I think just being consistent with yourself and giving yourself grace is a huge part. And especially if you're coming at it with like a perfectionist mentality. And I think a lot of people go into the new year thinking, okay, balls to the wall, like let's go. And then they burn out instantly. And
Yep,
that's the whole
for
reason
sure.
why they've never started a sustainable practice, whether it be diet or exercise. It's just not sustainable. And so at the end of the 2 weeks or whenever people fall off the wagon, was it worth it? That's what we have to really ask ourselves, in that would it be better just to start a sustainable practice right away? Like, if you're doing nothing right now, maybe a 10-minute walk once a week. And as soon as you do that, it's interesting how the confidence can boost you to do, okay, I can do this one thing. I can do twice a week. And then you move it up. And before you know it, it's okay if you're at month 2 and you're only working out 2 days a week or 3 days a week. It is okay. So I love how you say just meet yourself where you're at and create those realistic first steps.
Yeah, if like you said, you see it all the time. January, everybody's like, I'm gonna do this. By February, they're not doing anything. It's, you started too hot, you started too fast, too strong, not sustainable. So just don't try to be like everybody else. Have a good conversation with yourself and start there.
Yeah, realize what you really can do in this season of life
For sure.
this week,
It's
versus next week. I think
it's
for
truly.
women especially, like, the cycle changes and, going through follicular and luteal and deciding what is the best week to be going hard and what week is maybe good to do some strength training or some yoga or something. So I think that all plays into it as well. So we covered a lot about anxiety and depression. I want to move into brain fog, because brain fog isn't necessarily a diagnosable mood disorder, but a lot of people say they have brain fog or mom brain even.
Yep.
And they kind of just report feeling mentally sluggish, unclear, or stuck even. And so how does exercise help with that kind of cognitive cloudiness or just brain fog in general?
Yeah, good question. And I feel like that I can speak to that from personal experience. I deal with that. I feel like all the time. Like I said, I struggle with anxiety and stress, and I'm pretty open about it. So brain fog is definitely a real thing, and it sucks. And we hear it a lot. I mean, it's become pretty common to hear people feel like they don't feel like they're functioning mentally, like, or cognitively as sharp as they might have used to. So, like, from a movement standpoint, there's a few different things that help with that. So, if the first thing is you move, you increase your blood flow. When you move, increase blood flow to the brain, especially like areas involved in attention and function. You're increasing that blood flow, which just makes you a little sharper anyways. Going back to that neurochemistry, you get that hit of dopamine and norepinephrine, which is interesting because I believe those are the same areas like ADHD meds tend to target. So now you're getting that hit with just that neurochemistry hit of dopamine, norepinephrine, and then the endorphin. So it's like a cocktail that just really makes you more alert. And I'm going to say the word that I don't necessarily like, but it will make you feel more motivated, do things. And then again, the whole neuroplasticity standpoint, over time, regular movement just starts to rewire the brain. So you're getting quite a few things from the neurochemistry standpoint. But then with more movement and more exercise, typically, not all the time, and it waves day to day, but sleep is typically impacted as well. So if you move more, and I believe the research says, especially earlier in the day, because of the circadian rhythm, you tend to sleep a little bit better, and better sleep equals less brain fog in and of itself. So it's like your brain fog, not getting oxygen, movement, you're increasing oxygen by increasing blood flow. You're getting better circulation. If you do it early in the morning, maybe around 7 o'clock in the morning now, because that's when it starts to get light, but you're getting some light, you're getting a little more stimulus. So you're just getting a huge stack of good things that your body wants and craves to typically make you a little sharper. Again, personal experience. If I don't work out in the morning, one, it's probably not going to happen. Two, it sets my day up so much better. I feel sharper. I feel more alert. I'm able to honestly, I handle stress better. So it's just, I know that while I don't like to work out, if I don't do it, it's setting myself up for a disaster of a day.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. And I do, I've read the research on exercise in the morning and cortisol levels and how we want to make our cortisol levels the highest. Everybody thinks cortisol is bad, right? But
Yeah,
it's like
right.
this is natural cycle that happens, and we want it to be high in the morning. We want it to be the highest in the morning to wake
Right.
us up and to give us that response to going about our day. And I think exercise helps increase that. And it's also, like you said, a great time to, if you can, get outside and go for a
Right.
walk. But again, it's very cold in the Midwest. But yeah, I think I also, when I'm reading the research on exercise and exercising at night, I feel like it is a little bit like do what you got to do, right, to get that movement
Right.
in. But again, starting where you're at and what works and fits into your schedule, start there. Put that exercise wherever it might fit, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening. Just be aware that it may impact your sleep. And
For sure.
it's totally different for every person, right? Like my husband could drink coffee and exercise 10 minutes before bed and go right to sleep. I don't understand it. I
Yeah.
wish I could have that. But I am more of a person who needs to have those high energy things earlier in the day. I did want to bring a little attention to a lot of people experience that afternoon crash. And this is for a number of reasons. Like we might not be getting enough protein in the morning, food in general. Maybe we are starting our caffeine as soon as we wake up, and that might not be great. So I don't want to talk about all the dietary aspects, but in terms of exercise, if you're feeling super sluggish and you have that afternoon crash, in your opinion, what does exercise do for you at that time of day?
Yeah. Good question. I'm glad you brought this up because while you were talking, I was like, man, we should really talk about caffeine here because if you do work out in the evening, I mean, you're and you take like pre-workout, that's anywhere from 200 to 300 grams of caffeine, like milligrams of caffeine right there. But that afternoon, I mean, there's a lot of different thoughts out there. My opinion is if you are struggling with and a little foggy again, and you're like, I can't function, I'm feeling sluggish, a lot of people will turn to that cup of coffee, which the half-life of caffeine, I believe, is 6 hours. So say you drink a 3 p.m. cup of coffee or two, that's 100 some milligrams of caffeine. That's going to be in your system for 12 hours. So, I mean, all night, that's not going to be get rid of your or out of your system until 3 a.m. So it's like your quality of sleep is significantly impacted by that mid-afternoon caffeine spike. And, I love caffeine, but it's not doing you too much good in the afternoon. So instead, if you're feeling foggy, struggling a little more cognitive, again, walk. I
Mm.
think keep it low impact and go for a walk, put a podcast in, or honestly, what I would recommend is just go on a quiet walk, move your body and you're going to realize your brain's going to start to process some of the struggles of the day and some of the problems that you're trying to solve. If you're stuck on a problem or if you're just overwhelmed by thoughts, it starts to work through that simply because of all the things we've already talked about. So I truly, truly feel hit up a 20, if you can, a 30-minute walk. And if that's too long, go for a couple of hauls around the block. Just get up, move. If you got a treadmill, hit that up, do something to be active because then your brain will start to work through some of these things. And then the rest of the afternoon, you're going to feel more alert. It's going to happen. It's going to be better than that hit of caffeine and it won't impact your sleep
Yeah, I couldn't agree.
negatively.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more on the walk and clearing your mind. And I think a lot of us want to just put noise in our ears,
Mhm.
me included. Like if I go for a walk or I do something, I almost always have a podcast on. But if I'm really struggling with something or have to make an important decision, sometimes I will do the silent walk too and just allow your brain to process those things. Because when we keep pushing it off, I think it just creates more anxiety around all the things either we have to do or the decisions we have to make. And so I do think if you're feeling really anxious or have a lot of brain fog, it might be helpful just to have that quiet walk. And, I wanted to say too, because I know we've been talking about walks so much. We're going to give a little spotlight on just one other thing because walking is great. We know that. Research shows us that. But I recently read that I think it's 10 squats. It's not 5. I think 10 squats every hour
Or
can
yep.
actually reduce your your blood sugar levels more significantly than going on a daily 30-minute walk, which was
Yep.
crazy to me.
Yep.
And I
It's
think it
wild.
makes sense because your insulin, your blood sugar, they're a little bit more sensitive right throughout the day and they're going up and down by the hour. And so if you're clearing that blood sugar by doing some squats, that can be really helpful, especially, and again, with people in the Midwest who may not have or thinking about going outside and going for a walk as helpful as it might
It's
be.
cold.
Right. Cold and dreary. I think just doing anything, 5 push-ups, 10 squats every hour, set an alarm on your phone, set a little task on your calendar if you use Google Calendar or something. All of those little steps truly, truly add up and can significantly impact your health.
Sure. For sure. Yeah, I think it was either 10 to 20. I read the same research, 10 to 20 squats every hour or before or directly after a big carb meal. to help
Yeah.
you process that blood glucose. It's it's interesting.
What's so interesting, and I have to throw this in there too because most people wouldn't even think breathing. And by the time of this airing, I will have already released a podcast episode about breathing deeply prior to eating. It is insane what it does, like on these subjects where they did like, I don't know, 4 breaths of breathing in and out prior to eating a meal, had this, and then the other people had the same meal. They didn't do any breathing. The blood sugar of the people who did breathing was less than
Interesting.
the other people. So it's just like
That's
just
cool.
calming down, getting that rest and digest nervous system going can really make a difference too. So
Yeah, and I think
obviously there's so many things, right?
I was gonna say, like, shoot, chew your food, what is it, 25 times to really release those digestive enzymes too? So, like, the big thing here, slow down. Like,
Right.
everything is like go, go, go all the time. I'll have a podcast that's going out this week, so December, that's talking about actually seasonal depression. And just instead of viewing this dark time as like a time where it's dark and dreary all the time, it's all about Erica actually was the catalyst to this. She's like, well, what if we just view it as a forced reset and our body has to slow down? So why can't we, instead of like it's this daunting darkness, what if we go hard all summer, just slow down? And that's can be thrown in every aspect of life.
Yeah.
Digress, but I just think it's interesting, all of this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of other cultures too, especially Native American cultures that, believe in the seasons and how winter we are meant to slow down. And I mean, obviously, in a modern day and age, there's constant access to food, and it's not like we have that energy depletion, or I should say, not as much access to energy. But no, I do think there are certain seasons where it's okay and give yourself a little more grace and enjoy, holidays or the things that are going on. But yeah, I love that. Um, so how can communities, workplaces, or even just public health systems better integrate exercise as part of mental health support, not just for physical wellness, but more so for cognitive or emotional wellness too?
Yeah, I think like in workplaces, some places are already doing this where they'll have like a morning stretch. I know a lot of the utility companies or gas companies, they'll have people their crews do a morning stretch routine before they go out on the job site or something like that. I think overall you need to make it like stop treating it as an optional thing to do and start treating it as like a core mental health like infrastructure type of deal because again it's the meds and the therapy are always pushed, movement never is. So how can we just build that in your day? So it's got to be made like as a default part of the care plan. And if it starts to be accepted like that, oh hey, this is for my mental health, it should be much more accepted. So like going back to that study, physical activity should be a mainstay approach in managing these conditions, not an optional thing. So they can build partnerships. So like in the workplace, normalize walking meetings instead of all these like team meetings or Google Meets where we're sitting at a desk, movement breaks, flexible scheduling that builds in ability to work out, like sneak a midday workout in. I think more places are starting to do this, where HSAs and stuff are becoming gym membership approved, but allow people to utilize those funds that are typically go towards like your traditional Medicare costs towards gym memberships, group classes, the same way you kind of allow for counseling visits and whatnot. And then in communities, like there's so many walking paths and trails here and gyms that have communities. Like just make it a part of life and view it as, hey, this is for if it's a healthcare setting or a workplace, this is part of our employees' like mental health. It should be at the forefront of our plan because if we lose these people, I mean, they're valuable to us. So how can we best take care of them? I think it just becomes, if it becomes a normal part of the conversation that movement should be part of this mental health approach, I guess, because it's on the rise. I mean, you listed the stats. It's overwhelming. Like if we're serious about combating the mental health issues that we're dealing with, like we can't just expand meds and therapy. We have to make this movement easy, normal, accessible in all these places that we spend as people in workforces most of our days at. So I think just integrating into the workday and giving people the time and the capacity to do it is where we start.
Yeah, and I think a huge focus has been on, at least in the wellness or in the corporate area,
Mhm. Yep.
in the workplace. I think a huge focus has been on the physical aspect of it, decreasing heart disease and decreasing
Correct.
cholesterol and all of that, whereas it really hasn't been touched on as much for emotional wellness. And so I think, like you said, that absolutely should become a part of the landscape of wellness for mental health. So we talked about a lot today. If you could just give one message, let's sum it up, like one message you could give to somebody sitting on the fence who thinks they're too busy, I'm too depressed to move, I'm too foggy headed, I can't think clearly. What's the one thing that you would tell them?
One thing. I think the easiest thing is that movement's medicine. Like if you can sum it up, movement is simply medicine. It's going to give you momentum. It's going to get rid of that brain fog. It's going to give you mental resiliency. So if you can just view it as, hey, this is part of my mental health plan, instead of change the verbiage, instead of working out, I don't like the word workout, use training. What are you training for? What's your why? What drives you forward? Like start viewing it as part of your medical plan. I think that starts to change the landscape around it. So play with the words, play with the verbiage. Movement's medicine. And if you're a rebel and you want to rebel, like come back yourself, be like, hey, mind, I hear you, but I'm going to act against what you're telling me to do. That's how you start to move the needle forward. Think about the person that you want to become and just act that way. I think that's the best thing that you can do, is just take that approach, fight what your mind's telling you, and just move your body.
I love that. Thank you so much, Trevor. So, what's next for you? Any new programs or projects? Anything you're excited about?
And there's a lot coming up. We are looking for our next team member. We are looking for our pelvic floor and ortho physical therapist for our team. So if you guys know of anybody, send them our way. Our clinic, our gym space, our clinic's built like a gym, trying to figure out how to navigate to get more space in there. So a lot of growth up around the corner for the movement team. Life keeps going on. So there's changes coming there too as well. So Erica's pregnant. I'll just say it. So we've got another little guy on the way, and so like personal, business wise, there's things moving on.
Yeah, congratulations. That's so exciting. And I think to your last point about finding your true why, I mean, aren't kids just the epitome of finding your true why, and like why we want to move our
Or
bodies to support them and to not have aches and pains and to be clear-headed for them so we can be better parents, right?
It's huge. I told Erica this morning. I worked out earlier this morning, and I wanted to stop. Like I was in the middle of it. I was like, I don't want to do this. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to have 2 kids and they're going to need energy and I got to take care of myself. So just keep going.
Good
And I
for
did.
you.
Like you're always going to have those mental battles. Your mind never wants to do hard things. You just got to fight it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your inspiring words. And Trevor, how can listeners connect with you if they want to learn more about you and your business?
Yeah. We are on, I think, if you're looking for more about us, we're on Instagram. I think our Instagram handle's MVMT.rehab. The whole team's there. I think we have a ton of free resources on our website. We've got ebooks and blogs where we talk about all of this stuff. We're very open. I want like conversations around everything. So there's guidebooks on everywhere from pelvic floor, postpartum pain to just your, shin splints or knee pain, basically stuff that you can download, implement, hit that up. We've got the podcast on there, but if you want to contact us, we got a contact form. If you have questions, like use us as a resource. Best place to do that is to go through the website that is movementgb.com. So mvmtgb.com. Podcast is out there. So like basically just use us as a resource. We want to help you. And if there's anything that we can do on the ortho, or if you are dealing with stuff, like just reach out. We're open books. We're people. We just want to help. So definitely reach out.
Well, thank you so much, Trevor. I really enjoyed our conversation today. I think it is so important to be talking about this. So I appreciate your expertise and your knowledge around it.
Yeah. No, thanks for having me on, Cassie. This was great. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode of the Wellness That Fits podcast. I hope you walk away with simple, doable steps you can put into practice right away. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world if you subscribed, left a review, or shared it with another busy mom who could use some encouragement. Until next time, friends, keep creating wellness that fits your life.